Organizational communication part 4, this lecture will consist of the flow and types of communication, and here we will discuss about in details how different directions of communication will result in the flow in the organization. So, the flow of information can be upward, downward, lateral or diagonal as discussed earlier in the part 2 of the communication process, and then in the we will discuss about a hierarchical detail of hierarchical structure and how the communication flows in the organization. And communication flow in organization can be downward, upward, horizontal communication, that is between people on the same or similar organizational levels. Diagonal communication involves persons from different levels who are not in direct reporting relationship with one another. Downward communication from the top management to the employees in different hierarchical levels. Upward is like a feedback mechanism generated from the lower level of management to the top management regarding various day to day routine feedback or feedback on some kind of project or any operational work. Horizontal communication is the communication between from one person to another person with the same rank and file, or between two departmental or the people having same organizational levels. Diagonal communication is involving persons from different levels, like say for example, as we have already discussed that team communication is very important in day to day functioning of the contemporary organizations. So, in a progressive organizations there are different types of teams, cross functional teams like quality assessment teams, say problem solving teams, innovative teams or creative teams. So, on various fronts these there is a diagonal communication occurring because people in the team may not as they are from different functional areas. So, there would be some managers who are in a very high position in another functional area and they are communicating with a manager who is in a lower rank from different department. So, that is a kind of diagonal reporting, or not, they are not in direct reporting relationship with one another, but there is a kind of official communication or formal communication, formal relationship, formal communication, because they are part of the decision making teams. Communicating in hierarchy, workspace designs, e-magazines, blogs, wikis, employee surveys, direct communication with management. As in this diagram we have also seen that there is a communication flow and communication flow within the organization and how people communicate in hierarchies. Type of communication, there is an internal and external communication. As we discussed earlier, broad categories of communication is organizational communication and managerial communication. Out of that there is an corporate communication will have internal as well as external communication. Internal means within communication that happens within the organization, that is specifically between the people in the organization, employees in the organization. External communication is a kind of communication that an organization has with people outside the organization, various stakeholders in the organization. They could be the relationship or their communication interaction with financial investors, the bankers, the media and public pressure groups and various other people like customers and other stakeholders. It could be with press. So, the communication with the government machineries. So, communication is done either for internal, that is specifically for employees, or external, that is shareholders of or stakeholders, and you can communicate either formally or informally. What is the type of communication network? Based on the flow of communication, there are different types of communication networks, formally and informally defined. So, what is the formal communication network? Anything which is guided by the rules and regulations is a formal network. Formal network is well established usually along operational lines. It depends on certain established forms or genres in the company, planned and managed. The formal communication network can be well planned, it can be managed efficiently. What is an informal network? Informal network is a complex network, it is dynamic. It does not, in the formal and informal communication network, in a company, in a small or manufacturing company can be exhibited in this manner. There are, say, officially 3 formal layers in the organization: departmental manager and the supervisors in the next level, and the workers in the last level or the level 1 executives. So, if you look at, there is a hierarchical communication, there is a chain of the hierarchy in and within that there are some dotted lines. The black solid lines is the formal network or formal communication, and the brown dashed lines is informal network. At a moment in time, for they often change this informal network. And what are the various types of communication networks? Formal communication networks can be vertical, can be horizontal, can be diagonal. Informal communication networks, as we earlier discussed, grapevine, social gathering, water cooler moments, management by wandering around. It is not in any formal authority, but you when a manager just walks around to know about the problems. So, some common communication networks as a result of this, as a result of the formal communication: chain, the Y network, circle, wheel and star network. These are some formal communication networks widely used. What is a formal communication network? How does the chain communication look like? What is a wheel and all channel communication network? Chain communication rigidly follows the chain of command, or the hierarchy. Wheel is, it relies on a central figure to act as the conduit for all communication. Teams with a strong leader, and there is a nodal agency. The wheel communication network will be guided by one central or nodal authority through which the communication will flow to all the members in the channel. So, it is a kind of the communication, both bidirectional communication between the nodal agency and the other individuals with whom he or she is interacting. All channel is a communication flow where all members can easily pass on information from one to another. All group members communicate effectively with each other, and it is like in the case of self-managed teams. Formal small group networks, type of networks and what are the criteria. With respect to the criteria like speed, accuracy, emergence of a leader, leader member satisfaction or member satisfaction, if we plot these 3, channel, wheel and all channel network, we will see that speed is moderate in chain type of communication network, very fast in wheel, because the information flow flows through nodal agency. Similarly, all channel communication network is also very fast. In terms of accuracy, you can see the chain and wheel has high accuracy as the information is controlled. Information is controlled by a higher authority or a nodal agency in case of wheel, and it is moderate in case of all channel. Emergence of a leader is moderate in chain and high in wheel, because there is a one authority who has access to information, and all channel there is no emergence of leadership, everybody has equal access to the information. And member satisfaction is moderate in chain, but low in wheel, because the message is, because only one person is empowered with higher number of with access to all information. So, there is low chance of member satisfaction, but in all channel everybody is empowered to have or empowered or entitled to have information. All members, they feel having access to information. So, member satisfaction is high in case of all channel communication network. Informal communication network or grapevine, what is that and how does it help in official communication? Grapevine is a way of expressing ourselves, venting out our emotions. As we discussed emotions, if we withhold emotions, it may have adverse consequences. So, there should be some mechanism to vent out your emotions, and reinstating the fact that humans are social beings. As we know, an individual will feel relaxed when there is a there is a space to vent out your emotions. It is an informal communication channel that exists across organizations and cuts across all communication, all boundaries. So, what is grapevine? Early research findings of grapevine transmits information rapidly in all directions, follows a cluster chain pattern and more active in homogeneous groups, transmits some degree of truth, and it also changes due to internet. Emails becoming the main grapevine medium. Social networks are now global. Public blogs and forums extend gossip to everyone. So, as we know that there is some technology mediation which has increased the chances of grapevine. Emails, too many emails can be circulated to everybody. So, that also distorts, or that becomes a main grapevine medium. Social networks, social networking sites, blogs, they have also made the grapevine that have led to proliferation of grapevine. And grapevine, the main characteristics are they are informal, not controlled by management, perceived by most employees as being more believable and reliable than formal communication. I will give you one example with respect to that. Many a times when the formal channel of communication, when the management is not able to achieve its objectives through the formal channel of communication, so at times it uses grapevine to spread the message and gather or influence the audience. So, at the time when the VRS scheme was first launched, so they have the management in those firms which came up with voluntary retirement scheme, because they knew that people would take it as a negative message. So, they sent the message through the unions as a grapevine. When the message was not formally launched or conveyed, the message still had percolated to or has been disseminated to the employees through unofficial channels, through some people or messengers who could send the message to the audience, and that is called an unofficial medium of grapevine. And it also helps in getting or in realizing the objectives and fulfilling the objectives, largely used to serve the self interest of those who use it, and it results from desire for information about important situations, ambiguous conditions, conditions that cause anxiety. It is insightful to managers, serves employees' social needs. What is the benefit of grapevine? Grapevine fills in missing information from formal sources, strengthens corporate culture, relieves anxiety, signals that problems exist and limitations are. Distortions might escalate anxiety, perceived lack of concern for employees when company information is slower than the grapevine. How do we reduce grapevine? Announce timetables for making important decisions. There must be some timetable, there must be some plan, scheduling the plans accordingly according to the timetables can reduce grapevine. Explain decisions and behavior that may appear inconsistent or secretive. Decisions which may appear to be inconsistent or secretive, emphasize the downside as well as upside of current decisions and future plans. Openly discuss worst case possibilities. They are almost never an anxiety provoking as the unspoken fantasy. So, levels of managerial communication, intrapersonal communication, and what are the various levels? Communication in a business enterprise, how we will be discussing about various levels: verbal communication, non-verbal communication, intra-organizational communication, intrapersonal communication and interpersonal communication. Levels of managerial communication: intrapersonal, interpersonal, group communication, corporate communication, intercultural. What are the matrices of intrapersonal communication? Self-image, self-talk, self-esteem and self-confidence. These are intrapersonal, means when a person talks to self, the person is introspecting. Many a times it so happens that we talk about communication from the perspective of one to sender to receiver, but we ignore that communication can be made effective if a person reflects on self, understands his own image, his own strengths and weaknesses, his self talk, self esteem, whether the person is able to is having the confidence or sense of self worth, assessment of his own self worth. So, that also needs to be understood. Then after a person understands his self, then only he can think of correcting the noise from the perspective of the receiver. So, metrics of interpersonal communication consists of empathy, assertiveness, cultural sensitivity and perseverance. What is empathy? How does it help in communication? Empathy is understanding the other person. Assertiveness, you should put forth things very firmly. Cultural sensitivity is understanding the other party's cultural belongingness, understanding the or being sensitive towards the cultural sentiments of the other individual, so that we do not speak or write anything offensive, which can look offensive, which can also be considered as offensive by the other party. Perseverance, we should consistently speak, persevere on what we intend to send. The interpersonal communication, verbal can be categorized as verbal and non-verbal. What is verbal? Something which comes with words is verbal. Oral communication and written communication are parts of verbal communication. Oral communication advantage is speed and feedback, disadvantage is distortion of the message. Written communication advantage is tangible and verifiable, and disadvantage is time consuming and lacks feedback. Non-verbal communication, actions, facial gestures, voice intonation, silence, etc. Transactions, it transmits most information in face-to-face meetings, influences meanings of verbal and written symbols, less rule bound than verbal communication. Important part of emotional labor, automatic and unconscious. Non-verbal communication like body movement, intonations and voice emphasis, facial expressions, physical distance between the sender and the receiver. These factors are very important as like the verbal communication. If a person does not say anything, only silence can also speak more than the words. Body movement. So, sometimes the body movement of an individual can give an impression of whether person is energetic or person is satisfied or person is dissatisfied. It can speak about the self of an individual. Unconscious motions that provide meaning shows extent of interest in another and relative perceived status difference. Intonations and voice emphasis, the way something is said and can change the meaning. Facial expressions show emotions, physical distance between sender and receiver depends on cultural norms, can express interest or status. Nonverbal communication, what are the advantages and disadvantages? Support other communication and provide observable expressions of emotions and feeling. Disadvantage is misperception of body language or gestures can influence receiver's interpretation of message. So, what we have understood is verbal and nonverbal communication are equally important for effective communication. So, we must understand all those factors which can make both verbal and nonverbal communication effective. Emotional contagion, the automatic process of sharing another person's emotions by mimicking their facial expressions and other nonverbal behavior. Emotional contagion theory states serves three purposes: provides continuous feedback to the speaker, emotional understanding of other person's experience. It is also called empathizing with the individual, communicates a collective sentiment, sharing experience. Matrices of verbal communication are listening skills or language competency, vocabulary, and then general awareness and domain knowledge. A person can be effective at verbal communication when he has language competency, when his vocabularies are adept or when vocabularies are strong enough, and general awareness he is equally good in. he is good in general awareness and knowledge domain. Matrices of nonverbal communication are mostly kinesics, proxemics, haptics, paralinguistic, chromatics, chronomatics and body language. What are these in details? Kinesics means movement, gesture, hand, head, body movement, facial expressions, gestures, eye contact. Proxemics is the space distance between the sender and the receiver. Haptics is touch. A sense of touch can also help in, say, a pat on the back, say or touch. Haptics is emphasizing on the touch, and chronemics is time, biological, personal, physical and cultural. Chromatics is use of color. You must have seen various color codes in traffic lights. Color coding can also can convey message. Paralinguistics, verbal intonation, repetition of words and sentences, pitch of voice. If you compare the written and nonverbal text, the verbal intonation is like verbal intonation can make a speech impressive. If there is a monotonous tone and there is a variation in the pitch and tone of the voice of an individual of a speaker, then that can increase the interest of the speech, that can increase the interest of the audience. Repetition of words is just like it is giving emphasis on important words and pitch of the voice. All these are very, very important in making effective communication. Metrics of intra-organizational communication, organizational culture, then organizational politics, innovation, innovative communication, traditional technology enabled communication and technology free communication like verbal and non-verbal communication. What is the role of electronic messages or technology enabled communication? As we know that apart from verbal and non-verbal communication, technology enabled communication has become part and parcel of the modern business world. We cannot effectively communicate without the technology mediated communication. What is the role of electronic messages? Electronic media today presents fabulous opportunities. Customers are coming closer to businesses and CEOs are also coming closer to the employees, and the world seems networked with a variety of options available. There is no dearth of communication mechanism, with virtually everyone connected through social media such as Twitter and Facebook. Twitter and Facebook has become part and parcel of the present business environment. At the same time, it has also been noticed that users of electronic media have become negligent about the etiquettes observed in formal business communication. What is electronic message? What are the popular electronic methods of communication? Email, instant messaging, podcast and broadcasts and blogs. Tech enabled messages, electronic communication, emails, advantages, quickly written, sent and stored, low cost of distribution. What are the disadvantages? Messages are easily and commonly misinterpreted, not appropriate for sending negative messages, overused and overloading readers, remove inhibitions and can cause emotional responses and flaming, difficult to get emotional state understood. Emotions, non-private emails is also often monitored and may be forwarded to anyone. Benefits of emails, preferred medium for coordinating work, tends to increase communication volume, significantly alters communication flow, and less face to face and telephonic, more upward communication. It reduces some selective attention biases. What are the problems with email? Communicates emotions poorly, impersonal medium, reduces politeness and respect, inefficient for ambiguous, complex, novel situations, increases information overload. Other electronic communications are instant messaging, blogging or web blogs. More efficient, instant messaging is more efficient than email, allows instantaneous communication events, real time, communicates through clustered communication. blogging and web blogs seems more personal than large meetings. Empower employees to share information, ability to archive information. Other electronic communications are forms of uh, real time communication of short messages that often use portable communication devices. Explosive growth in business use and fast and inexpensive means of communication can be intrusive and distracting, easily hacked with weak security, can be seen as too informal. What is instant messaging? Immediate email sent to receiver's desktop or device. Text messaging, short messages typically sent to cell phones or other handheld devices. And other electronic communication networks, linked systems organically spread throughout the nation and the world that can be accessed by a personal computer includes social networks like MySpace and Facebook, professional networks like Zoom Information and Zix, corporate networks such as IBM's Blue Pages, and key points what we have discussed is these are public spaces. Anyone can see that what you post and can be used for job application screening, avoid overstimulating your contacts. Other forms of communication like blogs and video conferencing, blogs, websites about a single person that are typically updated daily, a popular but potentially dangerous activity. Employees may post harmful information, such comments may be cause for dismissal. No First Amendment rights protection can be against company policy. Video conferencing uses live audio and video internet streaming to create a virtual meeting and now use inexpensive webcams and laptops in place for formal video conferencing rooms. Role of communication in knowledge management. So, as we have discussed several forms of communication, verbal, non-verbal communication, written and oral communication and technology mediated communication, and all these forms of communication are useful, beneficial in the workplace in forms of knowledge management and dissemination. So, what is the role? We will be discussing about now how communication helps in knowledge management. So, the knowledge which is present in the organization in terms of documented and undocumented form or explicit or implicit form need to be communicated from one place to another, which will be used for in future reference for building the body of knowledge. The process of organizing and distributing an organization's collective wisdom so that right information gets to the right people at the right time, and important because intellectual assets are as critical as physical assets. When individual leaves, their knowledge and experience goes with them. What happens, as we know that there is a huge attrition going on in the workplace because of opportunities in the industry, opportunity available with another firm. So, also because of retirement, people are leaving organizations and a huge amount of information or knowledge goes along with them. So, in order to deposit the valuable information which is leaving the organization, there is a provision for knowledge management system, and communication plays a major role in knowledge in procurement of knowledge, in depositing or in documentation of knowledge, organizational knowledge. When individuals leave, their knowledge and experience goes with them. A knowledge management system reduces redundancy and makes the organization more efficient, requires an organizational culture that values sharing of information. So, next we will be discussing about what is communication channel, types of communication channel, formal and informal channel. Channel is the medium which is selected by the sender through which the message travels to the receiver. Types of channel and formal channel, that is, are established by the organization and transmit messages that are related to the professional activities of members. Informal channel, the used to transmit personal or social messages in the organization. These informal channels are spontaneous and emerge as a response to individual choice. So, we will be discussing about the communication channels in the next lecture, but before that what we have discussed so far, we have discussed about how communication, various forms of mediated communication, networks of communication, types of communication and their role in knowledge management system. So, with this I would like to conclude the lecture here, how communication, formal and informal communication and helps in managing knowledge effectively in the organization. Thank you.